having a team of people who can create products, and then I love making things. So eventually manufacturing products is, it's the best job in the world. Honestly, it really is.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. Today, I've got Ed Gilchrest, President of Gyre9. Ed, thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
It was great. Yeah, dude. Very, very nice to have you on. It's the Made in America podcast, Ed. So we start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
Our company, quick history, but it is a product design and development and contract manufacturing company. The thing we're really known for now, manufacturing, is electric vehicle chargers. So that's the biggest piece of our manufacturing business, but we also manufacture some medical products and some data center products and some other stuff. But the biggest piece of our business is electric vehicle charging stations.
EV charging. And why do you do it? What's the why behind Gyre9?
I'm a creative person, and when I got into, my dad had a grocery store growing up, so I understood owning a business. And eventually, after going through aerospace and a bunch of other things, having my own business seemed, it wasn't about money. It was about being able to do what I wanted to do. And so having a team of people who can create products, and then I love making things. So eventually manufacturing products is, it's the best job in the world. Honestly, it really is. I mean, if it wasn't about making money, the money part is always the difficult part. But the stuff we do, it's like, it's like Mythbusters every day.
Is it really?
Oh yeah, we blow stuff up. There's all sorts of things. It's kooky, but that's on the design and engineering side. And then on the manufacturing side, figuring out ways to make a U.S. made product competitive with the rest of the world. You have to lean on everything. It's, yes, we're here, we're in the same time zone, we speak English, but at the same time be really efficient. There's no guarantee that you'll be competitive, but we try to keep a pretty low overhead. And
you got to bring a totally kind of different perspective to it. It's not just throw bodies at it, get it out the door, but the pressure from a U.S. manufacturing perspective is to find a way to make it, not just make it, but make it efficiently.
We have unbelievable vendor relationships or partners. I certainly would say partners that help us be competitive. And we design most of the products we design, we don't make. And most of those products aren't made in the USA. They're made all over the place, in China and Mexico. And so we understand how they have their edge generally, and we're there looking at how they make things and what advantages they have, and then we try to find ways to offset that advantage when we're doing stuff here. And we do have a lot of companies that are looking to reshore stuff. And the pandemic, although that hurt everybody, the whole idea of controlling your destiny for companies. They can walk right into our facility, see what we're doing, and that's an advantage now, where it wasn't. Everybody was trying to go overseas for the longest time.
Yeah, it's funny actually, right? There's some twist of irony there, where a lot of people thought, the pandemic's really going to have in-person meetings mean less, and it's going to encourage people to do virtual more, which is sort of counterintuitive to what you're saying, which is actually the ability to touch and feel and get together. You're seeing that as a real net advantage.
Absolutely. And honestly, our growth is really recent. We were a fairly small company for the first 16 years. And then really the manufacturing started to grow, which helps grow the engineering and design side too. But our massive growth really has come in the last almost 12 months. And now we have opportunities that we didn't have before. So part of me isn't talking about looking backwards. It's really looking at what's sitting on our table now and trying to take advantage of that.
Do you feel like being a design firm and having sort of the roots and history in that sort of design and engineering component, do you think that's helpful in thinking about how to manufacture more efficiently?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. One of the things that's interesting on the design side, when people come and they'd say, well, why should we choose you? Because all of these engineers and designers are a wall away from the manufacturing. So when we design stuff, design firms are notorious for designing stuff that can't be made.
Is
or
that
made at the right price?
Explain for people that don't.
Because people will design something, and I'm going to design this mug or whatever, and you go, that's beautiful. And then you send it to some factory somewhere, maybe in China, and they go, yeah, no, can't make that. And they make a million changes, and or they try to make it that way, and it's cost prohibitive. And so as a design...
So disconnect between, I don't know if it's form and function, but it's easy to put something in SolidWorks or CAD or whatever, but that's a whole other thing to take it from that and actually bring it to life.
Right, the process of making it, maybe it's not moldable, maybe it's going to be a really expensive tool to make it. And it's been the fear, of a lot of stuff when people were pushing to go over to China, eventually that disconnect means that China starts getting the engineers and designers to do the work, and we completely lose that capability. And so for us, as part of the marketing and sales aspect of it is, we will still make mistakes. We will still mess up because we're humans, but a lot less than our competitive design firms who never get out on the factory floor because there is no factory floor at their facility. So that's really great. And then the flip side is saying on the manufacturing side, the engineers and designers are out there looking at, okay, this isn't really working well. It's not efficient. And they'll go back and make, whether it's assembly fixtures or make design modifications to fix the problem. And we had an example a number of years ago now where the designers and engineers designed a product, and we got it to a point where we were making the first one and realized that they wanted a very Apple-esque design where there was no fasteners, you couldn't see anything. And the guys did a great job, except one of the fasteners you couldn't get to. So we had to design a custom screwdriver for our client to be able to put this thing together because there was no way it was, going through this whole...
When you say Apple-esque, obviously Apple, the company, clearly it must have fasteners, but what you're saying is when you look at it from the outside, their first thought is like, it just looks like it's magically held together.
Yeah, if you look at an Apple computer, you go, how did they put this together? And they're very, very sly at hiding that stuff because they don't want it to ruin the overall design of the product. So when clients ask for that, it requires more engineering and more design thought. But yeah, we did have a few of those. It's been a while, but those things happen, and then you go, oh, oops.
So did you actually design and produce a custom screwdriver?
We did. We did.
What just, I don't know if
it looked like a screwdriver, but it did not have a straight shaft on it. It had a shaft that looked like something out of some cartoon. So you could wind it through all of the parts that were inside the product so you could get to that location where that screw was until we could make revisions to the design. But
because if the shaft of the screwdriver isn't straight, once like the bit of the driver gets into the head, how do you turn it?
Who knows? It was that kind of thing where it's so long ago. I'm probably telling something that's a little exaggerated, but it wasn't. We had to bend it around, and at the end of the day, we figured it out to make the first ones, but then had to make revisions to get rid of that. And that's where at that time, we actually weren't manufacturing at that point. That was early on as a company. And if we were making that product or put the first one on the floor, we would have understood even sooner and would have made an immediate design change. So,
why do companies use outside design firms instead of designing their products themselves?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's the simple overload. Sometimes it's a company that the owner, the entrepreneur who started it, came up with this great idea and they created a company, and now they need the next product and they don't really have a team to do product development. In many cases, it's the team within a company, especially when the team's been there a long time, doesn't have broad experience. They've been designing X for years and years and years and really haven't brought in a lot of knowledge from the outside world. We design many, many, many products. Right? We're designing from toasters to medical products to industrial products. And so we've experienced lots of different technologies and ways of designing things. So when a company calls us up that makes whatever it might be, we might bring knowledge from other industries in. So we come in a way where we bring new ideas. And it's always interesting because we try really hard to not be a lot of the companies have engineers and designers, and it's like, look, we're not trying to replace you. We're going to augment you, and we'll sit down and do brainstorming sessions. And they always go really well. They're always like, oh my God, we never thought of that. Or we thought of that, but we didn't know how to implement that. And so we have just broader knowledge. So we get it in many different ways. For a lot of clients, their engineers are stuck handling manufacturing problems. So they might have 3 or 4 or 5 engineers, and they're just working all the supply chain issues and the manufacturing issues. They don't have any bandwidth to do anything else. And we come in and we take the product development side. So
yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, I just sort of get it, right? I mean, we just talked before about manufacturing. You're always looking to remove waste from the system. How do you kind of streamline it, reduce scrap, improve, yield, keep your machines running, and then at some point, someone's got to take a step back and either iterate on the product or, to your point, come up with a brand new product. So it does sort of make sense where bringing someone like Gyre9 in from the outside who has like all you're doing, I mean, you guys have a manufacturer side now, but you've got a design team that all they're doing is designing products, kind of bringing that to bear to augment. So is that the majority of the time what you guys are doing?
And look, the thing is, for us, we don't get paid if we don't finish, right? We get paid along the way, but really our goal is to get it done as quickly as possible. If you're an employee at a company, the boss is telling you to get it done, but you have a paycheck the next day and you show up, and projects can take a really long time. And so, if we shorten the cycle by 6 months, that's 6 months of sales.
It's a big deal.
It's more than you're paying us probably to do the product development. So yes, we're generally faster. And the other thing is it takes some risk out of the process. So one of the things we do, right, we also do market research for our clients that need it. And that's one where for bigger companies, if you're a middle-level manager and you have to make a decision on what product you should be making. If you just guess and you do it and you're wrong, you're probably looking for a new job. If you hire us to do the market research and the market is telling you product should be such and such, if it's wrong, you could say, well, we did the market research and therefore we did it the right way. And in many cases, you're going to learn things you didn't know because you're, again, sort of looking inward and doing it unbiased. And we'll do reverse engineering. We'll take all the products of that category in the marketplace and rip them apart and do best practices analysis of it and all that. So that's the
knowing there's a market before you spend all the time designing and building a product is probably a good idea.
One of the clients we did market research for had spent well over $1 million developing a product, and they said, could you find out? Do some focus groups and stuff and see what people think about this. And every person who looked at it said, I have no need for this. I don't know why I want it. So they canned it. But we weren't involved at the beginning. They had already done it when they showed up at our place and realized it was just the wrong product.
The wrong product. Yeah. That's a long.
That was an expensive.
That's an expensive lesson. Yeah. How often are you guys spending time, Ed, creating something new? Like, hey, we want to figure out our next product versus the next version of the current product?
It's probably 2/3 is probably next version or the evolutionary kind of version of a product in a market. 1/3 of it is invent. Clients will come to us and say, we need another product, and we have no clue. And then we'll brainstorm and we'll come up with a product. In some cases, we might have an idea for a client that we already have, saying, look, we think there's an opportunity here. We don't design for ourselves generally.
Right.
We're designing for them. So we go, ooh, our opportunity, right? I'm going to sell you, Ari, on you should have this new product we just thought up, and you pay me to develop it for you. And so we do a lot of that too, when we see an opportunity.
Which one do you enjoy more personally? Like, do you like this sort of taking something and figuring out what's version 3.0, 4.0, or do you like the sort of the blank canvas of like, hey, we got to come up with something brand new that's not.
That's an interesting question because, one side I might say that blank canvas, but I love the challenge of figuring out a way to do what they're already doing better, because when you do it and they look at it, most clients are almost more impressed with we completely rethought their product and we came up with a much better way to do it. and that's a really good feeling. Inventing from scratch is great and fun. Believe me, it's a lot of fun. That's why best job in the world, right? But sometimes I love that challenge. I went in at one point with one of our clients, and it was a client I had in my previous company, and I walked in and said, "Look, we'd like to do some work for you." And they said, "Well, we're still dealing with your old company. And I said, "Well, how about this? Give me your hardest problem." And I've said this a few times in big meetings with clients. We'll take on your hardest problem, which is somewhat of, a tough question, because then we get the answer. It's like, okay, now I got to figure this out. And those are really interesting because it could be anything. It could be a process issue, or it could be a product need. And that's a really fun challenge, because now they said, well, no one has been able to figure out how to do X. And doesn't mean it's always successful, but that frees you a bit, because you go like, okay.
Well, no one else has been able to solve it.
No one else has been able to
So you're either another one, or you.
Right. So we go into it, and generally I don't take on jobs that within the meeting, that first meeting, that I don't see a solution for. So I'm hesitant to do that. So if I see a solution, and again, solution doesn't mean I know how to completely solve it, but I'll sit, and if I was sitting with you, Ari, and you had this problem, and you wanted a product, and I'm like, okay, I can imagine what this
you
would
sort of envision an endpoint of success.
Right.
You don't necessarily know how to get from where we are today to the top of the mountain, but you sort of can see the top of the mountain, and then that's the challenge.
Well, the funny thing is then I go back and I go, okay, we got this job, guys. Here's what we're going to do. And they're like, how are we going to do that? And I'm like, you guys can figure it out. Here's my picture of what it could be, and how to get there is the trick.
Right.
And mostly successful. There's times where we stumble, and it's product development. It's a really difficult process.
Because I was asking you about the blank canvas, and I in my mind I'm thinking about is it easier to write a sequel or to write the first book? And oftentimes, right, you're staring. I've never done product development, but maybe I've done service development. But anyway, you go to start something new, and you're either literally or proverbially staring at the blank page. And it's just like, where do I begin? How do you sort of tackle that writer's block approach? Like, I can imagine you in a conference room, someone said, create this new product. You've got a blank whiteboard and a marker in your hand.
Yeah.
Where do you go?
Well, look, first of all, it's a team game with certain individuals. I mean, it's a weird, product development's an interesting business because it is a team game, but then a lot of invention happens by the individuals. So you throw ideas around, and then somebody grabs it. And I usually start, ask my wife, I'm really in touch with my 8-year-old self.
Okay.
And it's really important because as you get older, in fact, what we do a lot of times when we're doing brainstorming and clients come in, we'll throw a lot of toys on the table.
Literally
Toys. Because everybody comes in, they're all grumpy, they have problems, and all of them think why stuff can't happen. And kids don't think like that, right? Kid thinks everything's possible. So we want you to get in touch with your younger self that used to imagine anything's possible. And I think about that. That's kind of me all the time, right? I'm this like crazy eternal optimist. And you go into the meetings, and I'll throw the stupidest idea out, right? It's like, well, how are we going to make we need a new coffee mug. And I'm like, well, wouldn't it be great if it floats, or it's made of Jell-O, or you throw stupid ideas out. And then somebody goes, well, yeah, that maybe, but that makes me think of something else. And you walk around, and eventually some dumb idea becomes the seed of a great idea. And you do enough of that. And I'm really good at throwing lots of ideas out. When we do brainstorming, because I'm not, I don't filter myself, because that's part of the key. Like, don't go, this doesn't work and that won't, just write it down, throw the idea out to the table, or go up, and put it on the board. And I'm also not as insecure maybe as I was when I was younger. I don't mind. Well, if you're the owner of the company, of course, it makes it a little easier. But I don't mind, like, if I look like an idiot, like, Ed, that's impossible. Maybe, maybe, but give me a better idea. So it's somewhat competitive, which is also nice because I'm known to be incredibly competitive. And that whole idea generation is more quantity than quality when you start. And you just come up with as many different ways to do stuff. And then we beat it to death, and come up with the best ideas. And and it's a successful way of thinking and developing. And in fact, we've done a lot of different things over the years. And many years ago, we did a fun thing with what they were like, third graders at a elementary school locally. And so I had one of my designers come with me, and we got in front of the room, and it was, okay, we're going to design a pen today, right? So we sketched
writing utensil pen.
Writing utensil. Okay. And so all these kids like, what do you think? It should look like a football. And somebody says, oh, it should be, nuclear powered. And you create all of these sketches, and the kids were great. It was like the best session ever. And we had, I don't know, 30 something different design ideas. And that's how I want my clients to think when we're in the room. It's how I want my team to think when they're in the room, because the kids were unvarnished, unapologetic, just like, I think it should be, whatever, have wheels on it and drive around the room so it gets to you follows you wherever you are. And these are like wonderful ideas. And so to me, that was sort of the essence of a real brainstorming session, even though these kids had no clue how to make a pen. They've all used them, so they had that knowledge. But so yeah, trying to get to that is really important. And then the adults take over at some point, and we have to actually create
something. Yeah. So you said you throw toys. That's like super interesting. I can imagine. I connected with the idea. Like, what are you throwing out there? Rubik's Cube, like, G.I. Joe.
Gumbies. Like twisty Gumby kind of toys, or slinkies. I saw one on your floor when I was here, a little Nerf dart. We'll have Nerf guns around, so if to sort of make fun of it, Ari, that was a terrible idea, I'm shooting you, or, so you basically just want people to forget all of that armor that they've built up over the years of not wanting to be wrong and knowing too much. Because it's interesting, we'll go into meetings and I'll throw an idea out, and one of the guys, the client, will be like, oh, we thought of that, can't be done. Go, oh yeah? How about this? You guys give us a little money. Next week, we'll produce it in our shop, and we'll come back. I have an idea how to make that work. And of course, the competitive nature kicks in. And we come up with something like, oh my God, like we didn't think that could happen. Like, that's why you got to blank that can't be done stuff away. There should never be that in a meeting.
When you start that brainstorming, do you frame it up in sort of in the same way you just framed it up here, which is, I think this is my way of translating it, but sort of no idea is a bad idea. Right Correct. Now, we're all about, what did you say? You said it's about quantity.
Quantity.
Yeah.
At the beginning, it's quantity. You have to get to quality eventually. But in many cases, all that first round, in a formal brainstorming, we'll do a first round, and then we'll do a second round. And because the first round produces a whole bunch of ideas, and then we all look at them like, oh, wait a minute, there's something I missed. There's something we can do differently. I'm talking about me, but the whole team does that. And we don't always get to do big formal brainstorms because they cost money, and some clients just go, just design me something. We'll do it ourselves then. We'll just internally brainstorm. But the same thing happens in manufacturing. I mean, we do the same thing out on the factory floor of, okay, wait a minute, like this is taking way too much labor. What do we have to do to take labor out of this? It could be design changes, but it could also be fixturing and reorganizing the work cells and stuff that people do, these Kaizen events and all of that. But at the same time, we try to be more, because we have all the engineers, we try to involve everybody in looking at the products that we make. It's exactly the same. I mean, the process is the same. It's okay. Let's step away. It might be completely from scratch idea, or it might be an evolution of a fixture or a work cell concept. So you try to do it through your whole organization. Look, I'm a forever student. We're not there yet. There's a lot of things we don't do the way I'd like it to be done. And there's never enough time in the day to brainstorm every problem, just impossible. But where it's important, you try to do it.
It's interesting you mentioned the Kaizen, because I was thinking about that too. Maybe a lot of manufacturers that are listening can kind of relate to that, how you take that same approach and the design side that you might take in sort of the waste elimination game. How do you know, you talked about sort of time constraints. How do you know when the brainstorm should be over and it's time to go to, we've got enough quantity, now it's time to move to quality?
Well, if it's a formal brainstorm, we have a particular schedule we meet. Usually if it's the big formal brainstorm, it's a 2-day session.
Like 16 hours?
Oh, yeah. So what you'll do is you'll spend like the morning explaining the problem, right? So you'll have the client explain the problem, look at some history, look at some competitive products, look at some,
What's like a theoretical frame up of a problem that you'd spend, you can change the details to protect the innocent.
Yeah. So, maybe there's a tool company that wants, needs its next tool. And maybe it could be a spin-off of something they're already doing. So we've already done research, of what's out in the market, and we'll present the research, basic research, like, oh, well, there's this tool and that tool and this tool to solve the problem they threw out to us before they showed up. And then we'll talk deeply about the problem and maybe the goals of, if there's some, part of the goal is at the beginning, you have this big box of potential, not solutions, but of the problem. And the goal is to make the box really small as you can. So that way, if you said, just design me a product, please, Gyre9, it's too big. So you want to narrow it down. So the whole thing about the morning is try to narrow it down so that we really understand the problem, and the problem could be anything. It could be a problem with the product, or a problem that they're looking for market share, or whatever the list is. So you spend the morning doing that. The afternoon, then we all
sort of comes up with the deliverable. So if I'm trying to solve any problem or design a new product or whatever, I start off with, you spend half the day really defining what the core is. And then the output of that becomes the problem statement I'm going to brainstorm a solution for.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I'm following you.
So honestly, that gets you a long way. The narrower you can make it, the easier the target is. And then in the afternoon, we'll all get together and we'll sit there with, generally we'll have a team of industrial designers. We'll split up into multiple groups, and each group gets a designer who can sketch, and it'll be, and we'll talk about the kids, right? It's like, okay, it could be like a football. Okay, let me draw a football, right? Pen. And each group, so maybe you might have 3 groups of 4 or 5 in each group, and this is somewhat competitive.
Which group's going
to come up with the best ideas? Now, probably 80% will be the same between the groups, because there's the easy, the low-hanging fruit stuff, and you're really looking higher up in the tree, like what? And so yes, everybody tries to be as prolific as possible, and no bad idea. And so then we huddle back together later in the day, and you'll look at all of those. And again, sometimes we do it in one day, but if I do it in 2 days, it's okay, everybody go home, think about what they saw. Tomorrow morning, we're going to do another session, and we're going to expand on it. And so we break up again into those teams, and we'll run another session, and then we'll post all those, which can be, these are generally the big Post-it notes, or huge Post-it notes.
Yeah.
We'll put them all in the hallway or whatever. We're all lined up, and then we vote on them. So we have a whole voting scheme of prioritizing, what's really breakthrough versus what's kind of interesting. And because we try to be, the client gets all this. We give them everything. Try to see, what does the team overall think is a real breakthrough, and then we'll tally that and give them a report of all the findings of that, and that's usually in the afternoon. And then, they'll come back at that point and say, okay, where do you want to go? Do you want us to follow those 3 ideas? Maybe there's a whole new product that we came up with, different project, right? A whole nother project. So that's when we get to do those formal brainstorms, when it's a large enough client that can afford, a big brainstorm session. Those are wonderful, because we'll generally come out of that with both a maybe solution to their problem, and also probably spin-off ideas that can be different products. And we've done that a number of times, and it leads to a whole product line in many cases.
Yeah, man, I totally. It's super interesting, because I think a lot of people could leverage some of this knowledge to do. You could brainstorm and use this like anytime you want. And it's funny, you had talked originally the 2 days, and I guess it doesn't happen all the time, but I could completely envision a scenario where doing that afternoon and then coming back the next day is super helpful. Cause how often do you go home and either lying in bed at night or in the shower in the morning or whatever, something just all of a sudden, like the two magic sides sort of come together and you're just like eureka moments,
And the fun thing is we try to make it really fun, right? You got the toys. People leave that, and it's probably the best time some of those clients' team have had in recent memory, because most of the time they're just
grinding,
grinding away.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, that was so fun. But also, fun isn't just fun, but it's we actually created something out of it. It was a fun process, and the outcome usually is really phenomenal if we can give it enough time and get the right people in the room. But yeah, no, it's a great process. So we try to use it when we can.
Absolutely. How did you where'd you learn to do all this? Is this from, your early days at Hamilton? Is it something you picked up along the way? Is it innate in Ed Gilchrest's DNA?
Well, it's probably a little bit of both, right? One, it is somewhat, me, but in the design and in the product development arena, the idea of brainstorming has been around for a long time. So we didn't invent it. If you were, I think, if you dug through on the internet and you look, it actually got on TV at one point because IDEO did a thing on, it was probably 60 Minutes or something, where they brainstormed a better shopping cart. And although the process was slightly different than what we use, the idea it was similar. It's like many, many, many ideas, right? And in the whole, both in that process and then following that process, the other part of that process is the general kind of slogan of fail often to succeed sooner. So don't put your head down and work and spend months and months and months, and then voila, there's the product, and it's like, well, no, that doesn't work. Quickly prototype stuff. Quickly throw ideas down on the paper. Then beat them up, and the bad ones be merciless, throw them away. Start again. And the more ideas, the faster you can produce failures, the sooner you'll probably produce a solution. And that's also inherent in the process. Because if it's too precious to you, if you're developing something and you put all this time in it, and you'd probably even step back and go, that was a horrible idea. It was like, why did I spend 3 months developing this when I probably could have quickly, even in your business, we're going to whip something up, we're going to do some KPI dashboard, and oh, that didn't work, right? And you go, okay, let's try something else. And if you can do it quickly, which is somewhat easy to do sometimes when it's, you like in your garage, you when you have a whole team, it's much more complicated because the team goes off and they're making a doctoral thesis out of it. And you go, don't do that. So but that's inherent in the product development business, and a lot of them don't do it. We tend to, love it and formalized it in a way that works for us. But yeah, I
can envision a scenario where partnering with somebody who's sort of outside the organization could be really helpful to sort of detach from whatever currently exists. You were just saying something I really connected with, the idea that, as your business grows, you've invented certain things, and it can be products, it can be services or processes or whatever. And, there's that old saying, what got you here won't get you there.
Right.
But sometimes we get really attached to the things that got us here, and we get sort of emotionally invested, and it's hard to sort of, see it from the outside. Oh
yeah, Ari, if at some point you were like, okay, we have to come up with new ways to present our data, and you came to us and you go, well, what do these guys know about? That's not the point. The point is, well, first of all, we are data guys,
right?
Engineers, but it would be the kind of thing where we go, okay, here's the process to get to the better, dashboard, or we'd all throw ideas out. Your team would throw ideas out, and we'd look and we'd keep asking questions. And the trick here is, we're talking about output, but there's a lot of input. I'm famous, certainly in meetings, for asking a ton of questions. Again, that's what kids do, right? Why is it this way? Couldn't it be like this? And you do enough of that where, again, you guys take it for granted, or the client takes it for granted, why these things are. And when you ask them that question, why is this white on the outside? And I was like, oh, I don't know. what it's always been.
Yeah.
Well, why does it have to be white? I guess it doesn't.
Right.
Why does it need a hand? All those kind of questions that people, in many cases, there is good reasons.
Right. Sure.
Why is the steering wheel round?
Yeah.
But in many cases, it's dogma, right? It's the kind of thing where it's just been always that way. And I'm a pain in the butt on that stuff because I'll ask questions. And sometimes we get clients because they go, nobody's ever asked us that before.
I love this idea of connecting back to your childhood. And I'm just going to ask you one more question. I'm going to pivot to something else. I think there's some mix, there's got to be, right, between sort of continually going after the pie in the sky. Actually, I'll connect it this way. It's really nice to see the world through the eyes of your children, and it's good to ask why. But there's at some point where you're going to strangle that kid if they ask why one more time.
Yeah.
So how do you think about the right balance between, I guess, brainstorming, thinking out of the box, and like being practical? Like, how do you bring those together?
Well, you don't stop asking why till you get to the core of the problem, right? That's getting the box as small as possible. So you ask why. And at some point, I don't know, it's somewhat of a field. There's no an analytical way to get there. You just go, okay, I think we've defined this. And then literally, you do brainstorming and all that. But then it's, okay, we got to, there's the thing, shoot the engineers and go into production. Right? Let's go on earlier on that. It's okay, shoot all these new ideas. We have to pick something and go with it. And it's pretty obvious usually when you switch gears and then of course it's not in a straight line anyways, because we start developing, we realize.
And then you go back to this.
Yeah, oh, wait a minute, like this, we have a better idea, or this isn't going to work. So I don't know.
No, listen, you got there. I got it. I totally agree with it too. There's just at some point there's like just gut. You just gotta go and then to your point, sort of get there. And
because there's a lot of right ways to get there.
Yes, correct.
Right, and sometimes people overanalyze it and they want stop. We're losing opportunity, right? Which we talked about earlier. Of if we get the product done sooner, that's stuff you can sell sooner. So if we ponder our navel too long, let's get the first one going.
Yeah.
And I'm usually the guy, oddly, I'm usually the one like, please, let's just get this first one going. We can then do a second one. We will follow up with the generation 2 and the generation 3. But if we try to make generation 1 everything, it will never get on the market. And that's why in a lot of cases you see products now, certainly software products, where there's a lot of bugs. You go, wait a minute, didn't they fully, they just want to get it on the market.
Right.
Like, get it out there and they'll learn the problems. And if it's not going to shut them down and go out of business, great. It's not going to kill somebody, great. I mean, you look at Tesla and, all of their autonomous driving stuff, it's been a long haul for them, but they've learned a lot by actually getting it into the market before it's really.
Yeah, that's where you're gonna get all the stuff. So I just wanted to pivot to, you went from design, you're doing a lot more manufacturing now. What is it about EV chargers that got you interested in that? And because you guys aren't making like the chargers I put at my house.
No, because it's hard to compete on that. That's, all of that pretty much comes out of China. It's pretty difficult. It doesn't mean we can't do it. It's just we can't do that till we're a much bigger entity where we'll have the automation and all of that to just do, low cost home chargers. But, okay, I'm an electrical engineer. We've been developing products. We started manufacturing products, and some of the stuff we did some drink dispensing systems. We did a medical product. We did some tools, all along the way as clients said, well, could you make it for me? I'm like, well, sure. One, I'm an entrepreneur. Absolutely. Assuming I thought we could do a good job.
Right.
We priced it, and if the price was right for them, great. And we did a lot of that. Eventually, we'd do it for a while. One of the companies we were doing drink dispensers for got bought by a major manufacturer, so that went away. And then the tool, ultimately, the better place to make that was in China, honestly. It was not enough margin, really, to do it here. And the medical product is a really low volume product that we were doing. But then along came, in this case, Juice Bar, and they wanted engineering help. And so we did engineering help, and then we did design help, and then it was, could you guys make this? Well, sure. And we're interested in it because, one, we know that's the future. Two, I'll go back to saying I'm an electrical engineer. So, three, my business development kind of partner in my business is Frank von Holzhaus, and his son is the chief designer for Tesla. So, we're really tied into it. So we said, let's jump on this. And we actually got rid of all of our other manufacturing, focused at that moment solely on the EV charger for them, because we only had so many square feet of space. And we spun that up. We were really cranking, and then it was grow, grow, grow. So we got another facility last year, and now we've got, 5 times the space we had before. And realized that this EV charging thing, although is going to take longer than we want to see it grow, it's a good market to be in. So we've kind of expanded out until we actually have one of our own products. It's not a charger, but it's a cable management system for chargers out in the world that we developed for ourselves, which is an odd thing because, again, generally we're not doing our own products. So that'll be out this year. And we know it's going to grow. And even if we just get a teeny piece of it, a teeny piece of a really large thing is pretty good. And we like it. The technology is perfect for us. We have people who can do IoT and, all of the electronics and software and mechanical. So it fits us really well. And in the commercial industrial market, the margins are enough that we can make it here and not have to think that it's got to be done in China. Or Mexico or some other place. So it's really attractive to us. It doesn't mean it's the only thing we're doing.
Right.
We've now added on, we're doing work for some really hyperscale data centers, like the Amazons of the world. We're doing large portable mobile power sources for peak load demand at construction sites, which all of these things sort of fit together a bit. They're all sort of power-based things, and the knowledge and the assembly ability of the team is similar. We've also just taken on a medical product we're going to be manufacturing, which is slightly different, but still fits in with what we know how to do. So we're trying to, diversify a bit because we maybe put a little too many eggs in our one EV charger
EV
plant.
basket, yeah.
But
it all fits kind of the overall model and sort of scratching.
Well, I also don't want to get bored, right?
Yeah.
Being in the design business that we're in, you never get bored.
Never get bored.
We have so many different we're not focused in one area. We'll take on anything. In the manufacturing area, I look at it similarly. If we can have a broad range, it keeps the team really fresh, and
they enjoy it.
But EV probably the central
thing that you guys are doing. That's awesome. Ed, it's been really, really interesting, and I appreciate you kind of sharing the design process. I think a lot of people could get a lot out of that, and it's been really great talking with you. I'm going to wrap it up with a few last questions. Are you ready?
Sure, go.
All right, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire stuff. Red Sox or Yankees?
I was always a Mets fan.
Aha, there you go. Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Generally Starbucks.
Sports car or SUV?
That's evolved. I have both. So, but my daily driver is an SUV.
SUV. Yeah, staycation or exotic destination guy?
We're always working around our property. So it's staycation. By far. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite business book?
It changes every week. So, and I'll say, I see on your thing, our latest grab to help organize our team a little bit better. So we've taken on the traction thing. So we're doing a lot of traction right now. So I'll have to say it's my latest thing, although it's a bit of a cookbook, and I'm not a cookbook guy. But,
I was going to say designer, not so much.
No. Yeah.
If you had to do something other than be the president of Gyre9, what would you do with your time?
I know this is supposed to be fast. Two things. One, in my company, I'm the guy who's always creating manufacturing fixtures because I see people struggling. So my weekend hobby is coming up with better ways to make stuff. But really what I do is I do a lot of found object art. So, because I have a full machine shop at my house. So I'm like welding and cutting steel and making stuff. And so if I didn't have to worry about dollars, I could do that all day long. It's because it's creative.
It's creative, yeah.
Yeah, that process is great.
Ed, what's something that you learned early in your career or early in your life that you think's helped propel you to all the success that you've had?
Well, to me, it's sort of the hard work thing, because at the end of the day, inspiration, perspiration, the whole, whoever said it, they don't define it's, Henry Ford or whoever, or Thomas Edison. But, working with my dad at his grocery store, is a little grocery store, and you never stop. You can always sweep the floor. You can always be cleaning or moving stuff around. Hated it at the time. It was the last thing on earth I wanted to do. But when you're 13 and dad says you're coming to work this summer at the store, you learn that it's not going to kill you. And so when you have your own business, it's 24/7. I'm sure you know this. And a lot of people try to start their own business and realize, wow, this is a lot of work, and you don't make any money at the beginning. And to me, it was like, no, this is like energizing. It's easy compared to the stuff I did as a kid. This is, yes, I'm working all hours of the day and night, but it's, so that was the key. Yeah, you got to be smart and you got to know all that other stuff. But if you're willing to grab a shovel and do any job, washing the dishes to, that, yeah.
That's what it is. I agree with that 1,000%. Got to love the process and be invested in that, not just the outcome. What's something, Ed, that you learned later in your life or later in your career that if you could go back and tell young Ed, and young Ed would listen to you, it'd make a real positive impact on his life?
I'm going to cut something into this, because one of the things that happened in the middle of those two things early on, that added to my sense of, how you look at life. And I'm not a political figure at all. If you ask me, Republican, forget it. I'm somewhere in the middle. But many, many years ago, they were interviewing Barbara Bush on TV. And they were asking her, so, was this your plan? Do you love being First Lady? And she said, I'll tell you how I think about it. And I think about it this way. We don't necessarily get to do what we love, but we have a choice. We can love what we do and choose to love what we do. And so my perspective has been, I every day I go in, my attitude is I'm going to love what I do, 9 days out of 10 maybe. But I think that is something when I was younger that I somewhat learned, but I probably could have known younger, because I probably would have gone at life maybe a little more aggressively than I did. But later in life, I think that opportunities come along, and it's a long journey, and you get to do this multiple times. We talked maybe offline. I've had multiple companies through the years, and there were times when I got offered quite a bit of money for my first company, and I'm like, nah, one, it's going to grow really big, and I don't want to have to start this all over again. And then maybe that company struggled and went away, and you're like, oh, wow, that was a lot of money. And again, didn't really think about it. But if I looked at it later in life, taking money off the table, it's kind of like, any other game. If you can take some money off the table, it's probably a good thing, because it gives you options and makes you in a more, it's good to be in a position of it's the put your oxygen mask on first, when the plane's having trouble. The same thing, take care of yourself, make sure you're in a good place, even though I'm not focused on that with my team. I try to take care of everybody. But if I'm in a very comfortable, good position, it makes it a whole lot easier to make decisions, and good decisions, not desperate decisions.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Take advantage of the opportunities you have. Makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, again, yeah, you always think, this is it, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. And I've proven that otherwise. So I've done a number of things. So, yeah.
Ed, I really do appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective. It's been really, really great.
I'm just happy you're doing this. This is a wonderful, wonderful thing you've taken on, because there's not enough conversation about making stuff here. And I'm always on my soapbox with people about, we can do it. And, we're trying.
There we go. Well, I appreciate you doing it with me.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by Compass MSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.